So a little bit more about market transformation. This is something that I've been involved in originally with Steve back in the early 90s. Originally around fridges and freezers. We got involved with the energy label on fridges and freezers back then, and then it went on to washing machines, dishwashers and dryers, and then onto all sorts of white goods, and more recently onto houses and buildings and also onto cars and so on. And so anything that's made in volume can be subject to this market transformation approach. And as I say, it's described more fully in here if anybody's interested. The approach is, broadly, that once there is a test method for comparing like with like, once there's a test procedure for assessing energy performance of a thing, you can start to separate out those things into good things and bad things. And the way that Europe's done it is on the A to G energy label. In fact, it's got stretched because it's now A+ and A++. And so you can differentiate between good things and bad things on the basis of an energy label. Once you can do that, you can describe a distribution. And sorry, beg your pardon, this one. This was the original distribution. When we first did the energy label on cold appliances in the UK, there were a few good ones, surprise, surprise, they were all Germans, and there were lots of average ones, surprise, surprise, they were all British. And what happened over a period of time is that this distribution of products on the market became this distribution on the market, just under the influence of energy labels. And what that means really is that manufacturers said, whoa, we're the worst. In marketing speak, they wanted to minimize rejection factors at the point of purchase. And so they said, let's move out of being the worst into being not quite the worst. So the distribution moved from this distribution to being this distribution. Didn't produce any new products on the market because the best were still the best, and they weren't, the best ones had no way of discriminating themselves from the other best ones, which is why the A and the A+ were introduced. It gave them an extra way of discriminating themselves. Then over a period of time, the other thing is that getting better involved a cost, usually actually a one-off cost, and that was one of the mistakes that was made in the policy framework, that people didn't understand that actually the cost of change was not really wasn't going to be expensive forever. It was the cost of moving from the design that was currently made to a new design that could be made. And if you could align that change with the normal production, the changes in design that went on, actually you could generally minimise the costs. But you could also incentivise the costs, and the Swedes developed a programme on technology procurement, which originally started with Stephenson's rocket, which was the first, if you like, technology procurement exercise that happened really, which is the purchase of a train, and since then the military have become quite good, or arguably very expensive at technology procurement, but they've certainly used it a lot. And then there are other ways in where the utility companies, particularly in the US, realised that actually it was cheaper to get more efficient kit on the market than it was to build new power plants. So they decided to have rebate programs for the better programs, for the better products, and that moved the distribution of efficiency in this direction. And then gradually there became a minimum efficiency standard, which said actually after a period of time you can't sell anything that's worse than a D. So the distribution kind of got skewed and moved up there. And we've just gone round a couple of years ago through the second round of efficiency standards, and everything's moved this way again. So you can use that approach with any kind of mass-produced product to move it from an average distribution to much better distribution in terms of efficiency over a period of time. It's a gradual thing. It's something that requires repeated reviews of the market because new technologies come along and so on. So it's a process to go through, and we've learned quite a lot about how governments, particularly at the European level, because it's a single European market, can interfere with the market to move it in a certain direction. So that's the process of market transformation. And as I say, it can be applied to markets, buildings, low and zero carbon technologies, i.e. renewables and CHP and so on, and kit, whether that's light and equipment, photocopiers, all sorts of things. So there's a wide application for it. So that's the process of change, And where I was coming from was the three critical kind of images in the deck so far, in the slide deck so far, are that graph of where the future might go, the COGS, the interaction of government, providers and consumers, and this market transformation approach. And with those three things on my mind, I was interested in where are the business opportunities, where are the opportunities for change in moving to a low carbon economy. And that's what I want to look at now. The first one, the first two actually, are really around IT, because information is power. The first one is metering technologies, because at the moment, if you think about what's happening in the area of energy metering, in the UK at the present time, it's still only a requirement for the utility companies to read your meters once every 2 years. Now that's dark ages technology, and that is coming under a lot of pressure because meters can be much smarter than that. In the industrial arena, meters are read every half an hour, and there's the opportunity to move to a much smarter meter. Now there's a whole discussion about what a smart meter is, because to the utilities it's we have the ability to turn it on and off from our end rather than going to your house. From a consumer point of view, it's I want the ability to know what I'm actually using right now and what you're charging me for it. So because obviously units of power are cost different amounts to generate depending on the supply that's available and the demand that's being asked of the network at any given moment in time. So actually smart meters could get to the point where a kilowatt hour or a unit of energy is charged on the real basis, the real cost of producing it, rather than an average cost that we have at the present time. And you can see the transformative effects that this might have on energy use. People will get much more interested in it, particularly if the unit price goes up, if the cost of carbon and so on is truly reflected in the cost of a kilowatt hour. So there's a whole program going on with metering, but that's the first opportunity, if you like, in terms of new markets. The second is, in terms of information technology, the internet. We were all startled a few weeks ago the speed with which rioters knew where riots were going to happen. And then a few days later the police caught up with the fact that they were all using Facebook or whatever to organise riots. But you can see the transformative effect that IT has on behaviour. And in a sense, there's a huge opportunity for the internet to change how we respond to climate change. And one of the businesses that I've been involved in setting up is 2 Degrees, which is an online network which does a variety of things. In some ways, it's a bit like the end report on the internet at one level. It makes information much easier to get hold of, much easier to search. At another level, it's a bit like Facebook, because there are people you can talk to find, if you don't know that person, you can find somebody who knows the answer to something. At another level, it's like a way for people who want to buy services finding the people who want to sell services, and vice versa. So it's like a marketplace. And in that way, it's a little bit like eBay. You know, it's about finding the stuff that you want. But it's powerful in that it's not any longer a community of practice who have to meet face to face. It's now a community of practice which is global. There are 16,000 members on there now. It's growing at 1,000 a month, and it's increasingly getting into the North American market, and it's increasingly using solutions in one market and transferring them to another. So, for example, the UK has done quite a lot of work on green leases. We had a student at ECI who was interested in the green leasing market in India, because that's where she was from. So she went back home to India and nobody even knew what a green lease was. But now, if there's a concept that will help, it can go global like that. So learning is a huge opportunity. And even within, we were talking about supply chains and the impact of large organisations on SMEs. Tesco's used the platform with their supply chain to set a challenge, to develop a series of actions with particular outcomes. And a lot of the big retailers with very complex supply chains, Tesco, B&Q and so on, use the platform in that way. So in terms of change and CSR reporting, or even looking at the carbon that's involved in a pot of jam or a sausage, you know, you can go through your supply chain and work with your supply chain to drive out that carbon in the supply chain very, very quickly. So this actually is a closed net. This is a closed network for Tesco and its supply chain, but there are open networks as well, so that you can work within your own groups in a very confidential way, or you can have open innovation challenges to say, hang on a minute, you know, we're Hitachi and I don't know, Samsung, and we have retail warehouses in Magna Park or wherever in Milton Keynes, and we're starting from the same place, and we're going to the same Curry's shop, and we've, you know, you're going half empty, we're going half empty, we're coming back completely empty. Surely there's a better way. You know? So there are ways in which you can address challenges and find people to address those challenges through the network. I should say actually that my insistence, access to the academic community is free. So it's a great way of doing research because you've got all your subjects online. So I would really encourage you to have a look at 2 Degrees. It's 2degreesnetwork.com is the website. But I would say that in terms of the research agenda and conducting research, for example, across Europe, use the platform. It's what it's there for. You know, you don't have to be next door to the person that you're working with anymore in order to explore the same issues. Obviously, you can load material up there so that people can share briefs or briefing documents or resources or questionnaires or whatever. So there it is. New ways of learning.